Ding dong, bitches, it's that time of the year. Welcome back to the big roundup, friends, that time at the end of each year where we take a look back at the shows that came out in the last 12 months. I can't believe another year has passed already. It feels like I did the last top 10s like 4 months ago, but nope, time do be flying, and it's already time to do another one. And there is a lot to say about this year. 2024 was a very strange year in television, full of things I did not expect, both on the side of pleasant surprises and on the side of crippling disappointments. Was it a good year for TV like 2023 was? I don't know, actually. Generally speaking, I don't have as easy of a time saying this was a great year for TV. But that doesn't mean we didn't have a number of fantastic shows coming out this year. 2024 had some epic, beautiful, genre-defining gems that absolutely deserve to be celebrated, and that is what we are about to take a look at. Making the top 10 this year was much easier for me because I feel like there weren't as many great shows as last year, and a lot of the shows I expected to be great, a lot of the shows I expected to be on this top 10, ended up disappointing me, which narrowed down the list fairly easily. And naturally, there were a lot of really bad shows this year as well. That's going to be the topic of the next video. But the shows that did slapped really fucking hard, and it filled my little heart with joy. I watched as many of them as was humanly possible, and now it's time to rank them. So grab yourself a hot chocolate, cozy up in your favorite spot, and together, let's take a look at the 10 best TV shows of 2024. Starting with number 10, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. To kick off this list, we have a show I was feeling a little nervous about. It's a project I'd been following very closely from the moment it was announced, and I wasn't really sure what to expect from it. The reason this show made me so nervous was that this was initially supposed to be made by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, the genius creator of Fleabag. I believe she was also supposed to star in it. Then she teamed up with Donald Glover, and my excitement was through the fucking roof. Two geniuses with a unique touch putting their brains together to reboot an iconic movie from the mid-2000s. I was like, holy shit, we might have something here, let him cook. But then... Trouble in Paradise. The details are kind of foggy, so this next info is to take with a grain of salt, but from what I understand, Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Donald Glover didn't really mesh. They didn't work well together. And from Donald's comments, it seems like they had very different methods to function when it comes to making a show, and they couldn't find common ground, so eventually, Phoebe Waller-Bridge left the project. After that, there were very few updates about the development of the show, and at some point it seemed like it was getting stuck in development hell. The series was originally set to be released in the spring of 2022, if I remember correctly, and yet, by the time spring of 2022 came around, they hadn't even started shooting. Eventually,
Maya Erskine
came in to replace Phoebe as the female lead. A bunch of other actors joined the project, essentially forming a quite impressive cast featuring Paul Dano, Parker Posey, Michaela Cole, John Turturro, Sarah Paulson. Like, this thing was stacked. They started shooting in the summer of 2022. Things were back on track. The show was briefly delayed due to the WGA strikes of 2023. And then, at the beginning of 2024, Mr. and Mrs. Smith finally came out. And thank God it was really good. The thing is, Mr. and Mrs. Smith is not trying to just be a retelling of the 2005 movie with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. No. This show very much is its own thing. It is a distinctly separate entity. It is very different from what you would have expected. It takes the concept of the movie and not only creates a new dynamic with the new couple at the forefront, but it also builds some mysterious lore around the concept that completely reinvents the story. So much so that I have a hard time seeing this show as a remake of the original. It's more of an expansion of it. Like, this is what I envision when I think of a reinvention rather than a reboot. In this version, Mr. and Mrs. Smith are not a couple in a monotone marriage that are secretly hiding from each other that they are assassins who happen to be working for enemy camps until they're forced to take each other out. They're actually two complete strangers who join a mysterious agency to become assassins and are paired together together to be co-workers, the condition being that they have to be married and they're given new identities as John and Jane Smith. They've never met anyone from this agency, they only ever communicate through text, so they literally have no idea who is behind all of this. They just know they get a lot of money after each assignment. And the opening sequence of the show reveals that there isn't one Mr. and Mrs. Smith. There are probably hundreds of them all over the world, and something about the enigmatic agency hiring them is not quite adding up. This show was surprisingly imaginative, and it did a great job at paying homage to specific moments from the movie while being completely unapologetic about being its own thing at the same time. And just like its predecessor, it is incredibly good at crafting its tone. It is simultaneously a fun spy show, a hilarious action comedy with compelling lore, and an actually fascinating drama that takes a serious and audaciously honest look at romantic relationships. Like, not gonna lie, at times between two action sequences, there were moments of conflict in this show that felt a little too real, and I was genuinely surprised by that. The two main characters are both very interesting and flawed in ways that makes them feel authentic and human. The side characters are for the most part really cool, and the mystery that looms over the story is very well executed. This show played all its cards right. It really had to justify its existence given the iconic movie that preceded it, and it succeeded at that every single step of the way. Donald Glover absolutely killed this.
Maya Erskine
is on fire the entire time. This show bangs. The ending was crazy. I cannot wait for season 2. Number 9. Shrinking Season 2. In last year's top 10 list, there was a little show called Shrinking that nobody had really heard about. An Apple TV Plus original starring Jason Segel and Harrison Ford that tells the sweet and at times heartbreaking story of a therapist trying really hard to move on and to redefine his life after the death of his wife leaves him completely broken. The show delves into a number of dynamics stemming from his relationships with his patients, with his colleagues, his daughter, and his friends. It was a profoundly charming and surprisingly emotional comedy about grief, love, and the importance of appreciating the little things in life. It's the type of show that can make you laugh just as efficiently as it can make you cry, and a lot of its lessons stayed with me for a very long time. And in 2024, the second season of Shrinking came out, and once again, it is easily one of the best shows currently on television. If there is one word to describe the second season, it would be consistency. Everything about this season is just as fantastic as season 1, and the show never loses sight of what it's about. Once again, Jason Segel shines as Jimmy, offering a flawed character that is so attaching and compelling. The season also confirms that despite all of the legendary characters he's played, Dr. Paul Rhodes is easily one of Harrison Ford's best roles. He is just amazing in this show. Jessica Williams is also still giving one of the most effortlessly charismatic performances as Gabby, and I really like where they take her character this season. All around, the cast is still brilliant, and the show is just as captivating, heartfelt, and uplifting as the previous season. 10 out of 10, no notes. Shrinking is unfortunately incredibly underrated. I know most people have not seen this show because it's on Apple TV Plus, but believe me, in a particular time where nobody seems to have any faith in humanity anymore, this show is a much-needed breath of fresh air. It is so heartwarming and cozy. It's a genuinely brilliant show with a lot to say that presents itself as a smooth comfort watch, and it succeeds at being all of it at the same time, which is an impressive feat. I love this show to the moon and back. Please watch Shrinking. I swear to you, you will have a great time. Okay, next, number 8. Pantheon. Man, Western animation has been on fire these last couple of years. Not you, we're not talking about you. But Hollywood is starting to embrace animation in a way that's been quite interesting, and even some of the most prestigious entities in the field are starting to take it very seriously, giving us some absolute gems in the process. Last year alone, the writer of Blade Runner 2049 made Blue Eye Samurai, which was my #1 show of 2023. We had the absolutely beautiful and soulful Scavenger's Reign, an absolute masterclass masterclass of storytelling that I am still thinking about today. We had Invincible Season 2, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. 2023 was a great year for Western animation, and 2024 solidifies its greatness as what is probably a sort of renaissance of Western animation, and this entry on the list is one of the most perfect examples of this. Now, this is a colossal technical anomaly because this show technically came out in 2022, but it was an AMC original and they're very awkward about their releases, and so for an extended period of time, there was actually no way for people to watch it if they didn't have access to AMC Plus, and AMC Plus, as far as I know, is only available in the United States. But then the show was removed from AMC Plus just 4 months after it premiered, and it didn't really exist anywhere for a minute until it was re-released on Amazon Prime, but for some reason, it was released only in Australia and New Zealand. And I don't know why. Like, the entire release of this series was a complete shit show. It made no sense, and it was always released in ways where, like, the majority of the world could not watch it, up until this year when Netflix stepped in and acquired the show. So, in November of 2024, Pantheon finally got a true global release on Netflix, which can be considered its real outing. And of all the shows on this list, this is the one I watched the most recently. Guys, I am begging you to watch Pantheon. I know that like 98% of the people watching this video, which is gonna be hundreds of thousands of people, have not seen it, and I am begging you to watch it. This show is fucking spectacular, and nobody watched it. So since I know most of you haven't even heard of it, here's the cliff notes. Pantheon is a 2-season treasure about a teenage girl named Maddie who finds out in a very unexpected way that her father, who she believed to have died a couple years ago, might still be alive, and that somehow his consciousness might have been transferred to a computer. As she tries to find a way to find her dad and get him back, Maddie begins to uncover a sinister secret about a powerful and mysterious tech company called Logarithms. And meanwhile, elsewhere in the country, we meet a 17-year-old emo boy named Caspian, a solitary genius who is investigating Logarithms and finds himself in the middle of a horrifying conspiracy that involves his own family. Bro, this show is insane. This show is so fucking good, it makes no sense. It's another one of these shows that came out of nowhere and just blew me away. By the time the first episode was ending, I knew this show was gonna be special, and it never disappointed me. And it's kinda crazy that this show flew under the radar so much because, bro, when I tell you the cast of Pantheon is fucking bonkers, I am not kidding. Daniel Day Kim, Aaron Eckhart, Paul Dano, Taylor Schilling, Maud Apatow, Rosa Salazar. Bro, this cast is on fire. And let me tell you, everyone is showing up to play. The performances are insane. The story is wild. It has some absolutely crazy twists that left me totally speechless. The more you start to piece the mystery together, the crazier it gets, and the whole concept of the story in general is just so fucking compelling. There's a lot I'm not saying because the show is very spoilers heavy, but trust me when I tell you that the little synopsis I just gave you 3 seconds ago is just the tip of the iceberg. And I love that a show like this could be made. A weird conceptual sci-fi story that is original and animated. It's not an adaptation of a pre-existing IP. It's not a reboot. It's not a spin-off. It's an original story, and it is a fantastic one. Pantheon is a 2-season series. That's the entire story. Season 1 is now available on Netflix. The whole show is a grand total of 16 episodes, and it is fan-fucking-tastic. Go watch it. Number 7. Cleo. Still in the category of shows that I know 95% of the people watching this video have never even heard about, we have Cleo. Cleo is a German action thriller / comedy about an eccentric but extremely dangerous assassin named Cleo Straub, a highly feared individual who, in 1987, is falsely imprisoned for treason by her own agency. Basically, after spending years diligently serving her country, she is mercilessly betrayed and thrown into a hole to be forgotten, and she has no idea why. Completely broken and filled with rage, Cleo swears to get revenge on the agency and the system she once fundamentally believed in. She is released from prison in 1989 after the Berlin Wall is taken down, and she begins a brutal rampage on all those who contributed to the agency's betrayal while looking for answers as to why they suddenly turned on her. The first season came out in 2022, and season 2 came out this summer in July of 2024. I've talked extensively about how good the Germans are at making TV. My favorite show of all time is a German series, but some of my favorite shows to come out in the last few years have also been German. 1899 is one of the coolest mind-bending sci-fi concepts I've seen in recent years. Babylon Berlin is an expertly crafted noir-style crime mystery drama set in 1929. Dear Child is one of the best limited series to come out in the last 5 years, with one of the best setups for a mystery I've seen in a long time. The Germans are on fire, okay? And Cleo is no exception. Cleo Season 2 is not only one of the best shows of the year, but just like Season 1, it is easily one of the most unapologetically charismatic shows I've seen in a minute. It is so vibrant, so energetic, it's intense, it's hilarious, it's heartbreaking at times. The characters are fascinating and feel so unique. The show is directed so well. It looks so fucking good. The colors are popping. Everything is so stylish. The visuals just go so fucking hard for no reason. It's an absolute joy to watch. Cleo is just a complete home run, and it is way too underrated because a lot of audiences still refuse to watch movies or shows if they're in a foreign language, save for a few exceptions. But if you haven't had a chance to watch it, please do. Cleo is a blast. You're gonna have so much fun with it. I promise. Alright. Next. Number 6. Dawn to Dawn. In the category of shows that I wasn't anticipating this year and that I had no idea was even a thing that existed, we got Dawn to Dawn, the adaptation of the 2021 manga by Yukinobu Tatsu, brought to you by Netflix, I think. At least it's airing on Netflix, but I don't know if it's a Netflix original. I had never heard of Dawn to Dawn before the anime dropped, and even then, it flew under my radar. Until I saw my friend Matt Owens a couple months ago, and he was like, bro, watch this shit. This shit goes hard. So, after a compelling pitch like that, I had to check it out, and my guy, he didn't lie. This shit goes hard. Dawn to Dawn is the utterly bizarre story of two teenagers in Japan who build an unlikely friendship based on their beliefs. Momo is a rebellious girl with a short temper who wholeheartedly believes in the existence of ghosts, and Ken is a shy and insecure ball of anxiety who is obsessed with the existence of aliens. The two meet at school and argue over their beliefs in the occult, and they dare each other to go look for some ghosts and aliens on a random night after school. A decision that will change their lives forever, because on that random night, things go very, very wrong. Dawn to Dawn is a weird show. It is very unusual in its narrative. It is so out there and bizarre, but fuck me, this show is so charming. Because under the layers of its bombastic plot, which in itself is very fucking fun, Dawn to Dawn is a story about unexpected human connections. It's about people who believe life to be one thing, getting to exchange with people who believe it to be something else, and watching their perspectives change as they get closer. It's about people that seem like complete opposites, finding common ground and feeling more connected than they are with people who are more like them. It's about making friends and learning to forge relationships relationships when you're someone who is not used to having authentic bonds, navigating awkward interactions, building intimacy, and learning to gain self-confidence through affection. And it's about young love, because yes, the show is also a rom-com. It's so full of very powerful human themes, but at the same time, it never feels like the show is beating you over the head with those themes, because while it can hit you with genuinely emotional moments, the tone of the story keeps it lighthearted. Because yes, Dandadan, above all else, is really fucking funny. This show has such a unique sense of humor that is so integral to its identity and that makes the story stand out so goddamn much. I honestly don't think I've laughed this hard watching anime in years. It manages to perfectly bring humor to any sort of situation. A sad story, a larger-than-life fight scene, or simple dialogue between characters. It delivers everything with such an insane amount of energy, with the fast-paced storytelling, the vivid action scenes, the crazy plot, and the incredibly expressive visuals. Dandadan is just very alive. It's one of the most unabashedly dynamic shows currently on TV. And also, yes, it's really fucking weird. Bro, this show essentially starts with a demon stealing this guy's dick, okay? It's a weird show, and it has a lot of fun being weird. And the contrast between its deliberate absurdity and its fundamentally sincere and mature emotional themes is honestly fascinating to me. It's really difficult to balance these two things well, but this show does it perfectly. The writing is really crisp, the banter between the characters is hilarious and earnest, and the lore is just blissful chaos. I love this show. It's easily the most fun binge I've had this year. I cannot wait to get more of it. If you haven't seen Dandadan, do yourself a favor, watch it. Number 5. The Penguin. Well, yeah, no surprises there. In the category of shows I was pretty positive would make the list, we have The Penguin, the spin-off of 2022's The Batman. This series takes place right after the events of the movie and deals with the fallout from the devastation caused by the Riddler, killing large amounts of people and destroying larger sectors of the city. After that catastrophic event and the death of mob boss Carmine Falcone, the crime world of Gotham City is left in shambles and without a king, which leads Oz Cobb, the Penguin, with a chance to take over Gotham from the shadows. The show was created by Matt Reeves, but also by Lauren LaFranc, who is the showrunner. Lauren is a fucking gangster. She was a writer and executive producer on Impulse, an extremely underrated series I keep talking about. Watch Impulse, it's really good. And she also wrote episodes of Chuck and Hemlock Grove. She has a lock on telling strong stories with a lot of intensity and tension, and so teaming her up with the guy who made The Batman to make a crime thriller in the Gotham City from the 2022 film? Yeah, the recipe was immaculate. This show is fucking crazy, from the story to the aesthetics, the writing, the cast. Colin Farrell is unsurprisingly brilliant as Oz. He's probably gonna be showered in awards for this role. I consistently forgot I was watching Colin Farrell every episode. The incredible makeup and prosthetics paired with his insane performance make it that he simply disappears into the role. The Penguin feels like a real fucking person, and it makes the show fascinating. But the real star of this show is undeniably Kristen Milioti as Sophia Falcone. She fucking owns this show, and moving forward, this is probably going to be the role she's recognized for, even more so than her role as the mother in How I Met Your Mother. Episode 4, which is entirely about Sophia's backstory, is essentially just an hour of Kristen Milioti flexing her insane acting skills all over your screen, and it's probably my favorite single episode of television to come out this year. I was absolutely floored by her. But most of all, the story of this show was necessary for the future of the Batman movies. Obviously, we know the Bat is going to go toe-to-toe with the Penguin at some point, and we needed to see his ascension to the top of Gotham, to see how he built his empire and how he gained influence over the government and how ruthless he actually is. We needed this show to bridge the gap between the small-time drug dealer from the Batman and the literal kingpin of Gotham who towers over everyone else. By the end, you fully believe that the schmuck that got bodied by the Bat in 12 seconds in the movie could now be able to stand up to the Batman. And he set up his empire in a way where he's also going to be able to stand up to Bruce Wayne. A lot of people say this show is the spiritual child of The Godfather and The Sopranos, and I kinda see it. Despite the fact that this is technically a comic book adaptation that takes place in Gotham City and deals primarily with Batman villains, there isn't a single point where the Penguin feels like a comic booky show, if that makes sense. It's straight up just a gritty and grounded mob boss story about the crime underworld of Gotham and the war between two families in the Mafia. It's genuinely a fantastic standalone entry in the franchise that has just as much merit despite not having any A-listers in it. The Penguin was a pretty risky bet to take on. I think there were a lot of scenarios in which this would have been a disaster, but Lauren LaFranc really said, "Bitch, hold my beer," and just knocked it out of the park. This show was wild from beginning to end, and I am very excited to see where they're gonna take this story next. Okay, let's move on. Number 4. X-Men 97. If you had told me a year ago that by the end of 2024, an X-Men series would make the top 10 list, but that House of the Dragon Season 2 wouldn't, I probably would have laughed in your face. But alas, the joke is on me, because it's been like 9 months since the show came out, and I am still digesting the absolutely stellar slap in the teeth that was this masterclass. If you really want to talk about Western animation renaissance, look no further, my guy. I never thought in a million years that an X-Men series would ever make the top 10 list. I like some of the X-Men comics, I like some of the 11 X-Men movies that came out. I mean, a minority of them. Really, there's like 3. But generally speaking, I've just never been that attached to the X-Men. I obviously watched the animated series as a kid. I also really liked X-Men Evolution as a kid. But of all the shows that were coming out in 2024, I can say with all the honesty in the world that I really did not give a shit about X-Men 97. I was gonna watch it for the nostalgia factor, but I would be lying if I said I had any expectations for it to be good, especially not with the state of Marvel in the past couple of years. I was wrong. Holy shit, I was so wrong. X-Men 97 is exceptionally brilliant. And even if everyone was excited for this thing to come out purely out of nostalgia for the old cartoon, I don't think anyone could honestly say they expected it to be this good. Especially considering the fact that the original cartoon is not that great and it aged really poorly. And the main reason why this continuation works so well is simply that it grew up with its audience. It takes a much more serious and mature tone than its parent series because they knew the majority of people who would watch it are adults who watched the original series as kids, so the sequel series adjusted to that audience, and I like that. From the first episode, I was so hooked that it genuinely surprised me, and I was also shocked to see how excited I was to get through the week so I could watch the next episode for the entire season. I'm not gonna lie, this show had me in a fucking chokehold. I was properly obsessed with it. Every single episode is so well executed, and I was obsessed with the way it tackled its themes of political divide, of racial injustice, genocide, which unfortunately was very topical, the way it looked at complex romantic relationships, feelings of isolation, the power hatred can have over people. It was all so powerfully portrayed through amazing character arcs and a core cast that really does feel like a broken family. Episode 5 has one of the most genuinely emotional TV moments I've seen this year. I teared up at the end. The final line of the episode is burned into my brain. The whole season had perfectly executed twists and cliffhangers. The direction was stellar. The voice acting performances were stellar. Everything about this show was a success. I am still in shock at how much I loved it. And in its execution, X-Men 97 is still campy and fun, but when it's time for it to get serious, let me tell you, it is not fucking around. Honest to God, I did not expect this show to get so incredibly dark at points. The action scenes are epic. You get some spectacular team-ups that still have me completely speechless. Magneto is on fucking demon time the whole season. Cyclops finally gets an opportunity to show to casual audiences that he's actually one of the coolest characters in Marvel. Nightcrawler gets a mythical scene where he teams up with Wolverine in a fight, and I'm not lying when I say that it is probably the only Nightcrawler scene that could rival his intro sequence in X2. This show is just filled with glorious moments, both on an emotional level and on a full nerd-out level. I didn't expect this show to be this good. I am very glad it was. It made me love X-Men more than ever before, and I cannot wait for season 2. Marvel, if you fuck this up, I swear to God! Number 3. Baby Reindeer. Every now and then, there's a show that comes along that seemingly comes out of nowhere and just takes the world by storm with a general sense of surprise because nobody could have expected it to be this good, and it turns into an unexpected hit. A show that isn't an adaptation of pre-existing material, an original idea that shocks everybody and creates a phenomenon that sees everyone getting absorbed into it in unison. And I love those shows because you see them becoming a pop culture giant in real time, taking over the conversations online and generating a massive hype. Last year we had Netflix's Beef, the year before that it was Severance, the year before that it was Squid Game, and this year we have Baby Reindeer. Out of the shows that came out of nowhere in the last few years, this is the one that comes out of the nowhere rest, if you catch my drift. Nobody knew what this show was, nobody knew the story behind it, and yet it came out, and in like a matter of days, that is all people were talking about online. This show was like a ninja. Nobody saw it coming. For the like 6 of you who don't know, Baby Reindeer is a 7-episode limited series that tells the story of a struggling comedian and bartender named Danny, who one day meets a strange woman named Martha, who shows up at the pub he works at. Martha seems like she's having a bad day, so Danny offers her a free cup of tea to cheer her up. A decision that will turn out to be his biggest mistake, because this simple gesture causes Martha to develop an obsession with Danny, and she begins to stalk him. 4 years. And Baby Reindeer will immediately get you with its sense of humor. Yeah, despite the synopsis I just gave you, this show is really funny, which somehow makes it even more impactful when that humor is contrasted with extremely serious and sinister topics, especially when they begin to be portrayed without any humor in sight. In a very unexpected way, Baby Reindeer is at times very hard to watch. There are some horrifying sequences in there that make you feel very uneasy, that are only made worse when you remember that they really happened. Oh, because yes, for the 6 of you who don't know, again, Baby Reindeer is based on a true story, and Richard Gadd, the creator and writer of the show, as well as its main actor, is also the man this happened to in real life. Some narrative changes were made for a dramatization, but the brunt of it, down to some particularly gruesome details, is true. That caused some notable issues after the show came out, because with the internet being the internet, the second they found out Baby Reindeer is based on a true story, people started digging and found the identity of the real-life Martha. Her name was changed in the show, and they started harassing her, taunting her, and enabling her. She ended up being interviewed on television in the UK. It kind of turned into a very fucked up shit show where people viewed this very real, clearly mentally unstable woman as entertainment. Eventually, that kind of just faded away because the internet has the attention span of a toddler and they get bored of everything very quickly. But that was a weird sort of tangent that tainted the show for a little bit. But that aside, Baby Reindeer is incredible. It is impactful and introspective. It is a wild ride with so many moving pieces and amazing performances. I think it's the show that stuck with me the most this year. Like a lot of people, I assume, but by the time I finished it, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It's one of those shows that just burns itself into your brain and leaves you with a lot of thoughts and feelings towards so many things, but at the same time, it leaves you thoroughly entertained, because this show, with all of its very authentic darkness, is incredibly entertaining. It's funny, it's It's charming, it's confident, it just hits different. I'm pretty sure most of you have watched Baby Reindeer. It's been one of the most watched shows of the year, but if you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's not always an easy watch, but it definitely is an experience that deals with some seriously complex and conflicting feelings, and I think that is extremely valuable. Alright. Next, number 2. Arcane Season 2. Yeah, this is the one nobody's surprised about. Everybody knew this was gonna be on the list. It's the most obvious entry of the year. I'm not gonna dwell on this for too long. I've already made an entire video about Arcane just a couple weeks ago. All my detailed thoughts about the show are in there, so I'll invite you to go watch that video if you haven't. It's one of my personal favorites, but the bottom line is evident. Arcane is a modern masterpiece, an absolutely spectacular artistic accomplishment, a product of just pure, untamed creativity, and undeniably one of the greatest animated series of all time. It is basically perfect television, and every time I watch it, I am still in complete disbelief. We do not deserve Arcane. Season 2 was just as impressive as Season 1, if not more. It was rightfully criticized for being a little too fast-paced at points. Again, I go into that in way more detail in my video, but the story is astounding. The characters are remarkable, their arcs are sensational, and the visuals are fucking miraculous. It has some of the most exciting action sequences ever put on TV. One of the coolest dance scenes ever put on TV. I'm still recovering from episode 7. I loved it so fucking much. I could talk about it forever, but like I said, I made a whole video about it. Go watch it. And for the love of God, if you haven't seen Arcane for some reason, do not miss out. Please. It is a monumental, genre-defining piece of art, and I am so glad that this story was able to be completed. Arcane ended on its own terms. It is a 2-season instant classic that is probably the ultimate triumph of Western animation. It took a decade to make these 18 episodes of television, and it was worth every second. I don't know when the next installment in this world is gonna come out because there are gonna be some spin-offs, but I will be seated. Thank you, Arcane. You will never be forgotten. Alright, you know the drill. Before we get to number 1, let's take a moment to acknowledge some honorable mentions. These shows that almost made the top 10 or that even were in the top 10 at some point during the year, but that ultimately did not make the final list. There is a number of them, so let's give them a bow of respect. Rapid fire style. Fallout was a fucking blast. I had absolutely no expectations for this show because I never played the games and I don't really know anything about them, but I found myself so drawn to this world, and goddamn, Walter Goggins rocks and Ella Purnell is just fucking amazing. And speaking of which, Sweet Pea was an incredibly fun and messed up thriller starring Ella Purnell as a young woman who completely loses her shit, and it is a wild ride. Between this, Fallout, and Arcane, Ella Purnell is undeniably the crowned queen of television in 2024. This woman was fucking unstoppable this year. Batman Caped Crusader is the perfect representation of a show that understood the assignment. It is a very fun binge and a great nostalgia checkpoint for all those who missed the 1991 animated series. I absolutely loved it. Nobody Wants This is the confirmation that charismatic romantic comedies about millennials are alive and well. I mean, you know, like, if they're good and shit. One Day is the confirmation that depressing-ass romantic dramas are also alive and well and will still destroy you from the inside. But if they are well-written and well-directed, I will 100% subject myself to that destruction, and that's between me and my therapist, thank you very much. Presumed Innocent was a captivating thriller with Jake Gyllenhaal and Ruth Negga, courtesy of Apple TV+. This thing was super compelling and kept me on the edge of my seat to the very end. Invincible Season Season 2 couldn't really fit for the top 10 because only half of the season came out in 2024 because they made a completely stupid decision to split the season in 2 parts that were like 4 months apart and for literally no reason because they had already finished working on it. But even though they completely killed the show's momentum, the season was amazing and I cannot wait for season 3. And to close this out, we have My Lady Jane, an absolutely fabulous comedic period piece about a young woman who sort of accidentally becomes Queen of England. This thing was hilarious and had absolutely incredible writing and performances, but unfortunately it was cancelled by Amazon Prime after just 1 fantastic season because nobody watched it. Okay, and with that out of the way, let's finish this. Number 1. Shogun. Yep, this is it. This is the one. This is the absolute colossus that ruled the year with little to no mercy. Honestly, as soon as the first episode dropped in February, it was pretty much over. There was no competition to be had. I knew it was going to be number 1. It wasn't even fair to the other shows. In a year where a majority of the series I was most excited to see ended up disappointing me, this one started the year off so fucking strongly. I was floored. It delivered on every level. Shogun is a political drama adapted from a 1975 novel of the same name, and this show is just fucking brilliant. It is set in Japan in the year 1600 at the dawn of the Edo era, and it tells the story of Yoshi Toranaga, a powerful lord of Kanto who is being cornered and slowly threatened by his political rivals who want him gone. As he prepares himself for the inevitable war to come against his enemies from within, Toranaga finds his path crossing with John Blackthorne, an English pilot seeking to establish trade with Japan, who is captured with his entire fleet and brought to Osaka Castle. The meeting between the two leads the Lord to uncover secrets that could change the power balance in Japan and help him take on his enemies. So basically they were like, hey, remember when Game of Thrones was really good? Well, we're kind of doing the same thing, but instead of it taking place in a medieval fantasy world, it's taking place in ancient Japan. The story is just so well put together. The way you see these characters be driven by religion and greed, watching them find loopholes in their own codes of honor. The way these people who fucking want to kill each other have to act when they are in the presence of one another. The machinations, the games, the political intricacies, the interwoven relationships of each character. My guy, this story is thriving at every turn. It's also directed impeccably. The cinematography is crazy. The atmosphere of the show is so distinct. It's epic. It's a masterclass in building tension. The show immediately throws you in the middle of this fractured political status quo. You can sense that things are about to break. You're waiting for the inevitable moment where shit hits the fan, and when it does, it gets fucking crazy. The majority of the show is in Japanese, but there's a lot of English speaking, although there's a bit of a confusion there at first because when the characters speak English, most of the time they're not actually speaking English. In universe, they're actually speaking Portuguese because there's a big storyline about Portuguese Christians coming to Japan to convert people. But despite all of those language barriers, the show never fails to tell its story in an insanely compelling way. I was so surprised by it. Now, don't get me wrong, I expected this show to be good. I expected to like it, but I did not expect it to be this fucking amazing. Like, holy shit. Shogun has no business being as good as it is. The performances are all so strong. Hiroyuki Sanada, who is generally very underappreciated, is absolutely phenomenal as Lord Toranaga. His performance is incredibly layered and powerful. Same goes for Cosmo Jarvis as Blackthorne. But the real star here is Anna Sawai as Toda Mariko. She absolutely steals the show with this thematically complex character that compels you from the very first episode. The progression of all of their arcs converging into one massive war is just wild to watch unfold. Shogun is an absolute tour de force, one might even say a masterpiece. It is an absolutely insane accomplishment. This show fucking slaps. If you haven't seen it, do not miss out on this. I promise you, this show is the real deal. And there you have it, amigos. The 10 best TV shows of 2024. A really satisfying list if you ask me, with a wide diversity of genres and vibes. I personally really like that every year the top 10 gets more and more filled with animated projects, but I also love that foreign countries and different cultures are making shows with such massive impact. TV has gotten so much more diverse and interesting in recent years, and I hope it stays that way. As always, if there are any shows on your list that didn't make mine, maybe I haven't seen them, maybe I've never heard about them, feel free to leave your picks in the comments down below. My favorite part of these videos is to go and pick some gems to discover, so I am all ears. And now that we took a look at the best 2024 had to offer, it is only fair that we also take a look at the worst it had to offer.